Earth is the third planet from the Sun and the only astronomical object known to have a life. It takes Earth roughly 365 days to orbit the Sun, and this process has been done repeatedly since Earth formed. Why is it imperative for Earth to orbit the Sun, and what would happen if Earth were to suddenly stop? If Earth were to suddenly stop for only 5 seconds, there will be dire consequences. One of the consequences, which is significant, is that gravity would be tampered with. Gravity is all about stability. Take away gravity from Earth, you will see chaos erupting. Repetition stems from movement. In order for a person to show he or she is alive, there needs to be some kind of movement to prove this. Once a person stops moving and becomes still for a very long time, then that person should be declared dead. The one reason why I believe Earth is also a human being is because of Earth's movement. The relationship between Earth and humans is much deeper than we think. As humans, we tend to underestimate what the rule of repetition could do for our lives. As a general rule, if you were to do something for a very long time, it's fair to assume that you will be good at that particular thing. Legends and professionals are born out of repetition. Floyd Mayweather was one of the boxers who used this technique in his boxing career. No one could beat Floyd because of this technique. Why is repetition important in our lives? Repetition is the reason why you and me were able to do basic things that are needed to sustain life. Let me take you back. When you were born, you didn't know anything. No language, you didn't know how to walk, you didn't know how to socialize. But through practice and failing over and over again, you were able to master the skills from the day you were born. What is funny is that we are familiar with repetition, but we don't apply it in context. Multiplication is about taking a number and doubling it. In simple terms, we have everything we need, but the multiplication is the problem. We have talents, we have dreams, but the problem is that we don't manifest. We don't work on our craft. Repetition is about doing something over and over again because you believe in it, regardless of the circumstance at that particular moment. House music is a genre of electronic dance music, characterized by a repetitive 4 on the floor beat and a typical tempo of 120 to 130 beats per minute. It was created by DJs and music producers from Chicago's underground club culture in the 1980s. House music has two characteristics, which are rhythm and enjoyment. House music is great for dancing, jogging, and studying, and that is because of its repetitive nature. Instruments used such as the bass drums, snare drums, claps are all associated with repetition. While being in school, I would sit silently and observe two types of students, one of which is an average student and the other one who has a very high IQ. Now, I would observe the two behaviors. One thing that was distinct and stood out the most was how the average student would work hard in order to catch up to the intelligent student. An intelligent student would study a concept once and would master it. But when it came to the average student, it would take multiple attempts before he or she masters that concept. Now, a few are born with a very high IQ, and it would be impractical to say that in order to have a very high IQ, you should do this and that. But if you are an average student such as myself, there is something you could do in order to reach your full capacity. The way in which an average individual functions is through repetition. Floyd Mayweather is not necessarily by any means an intelligent individual, but he has the ability to master any technique through repetition. He once said that his father taught him that the less you get hit, the more you last in a boxing ring. He then made it his mission to master defensive techniques and practice this over and over again until he became an expert in this. The reason why Floyd could beat his opponents was because his opponents did not train as hard as him. There was either a shortfall in the opponent's defensive technique or simply they lacked stamina. At the same time, Floyd made sure that there are no shortfalls in his performance. In order for us to reach greatness, we need to master whatever we are doing. In order for us to master this, we need to practice. And how do we practice? We do the same thing over and over again until we become perfect. It took me a long time to understand the concept of repetition until one day I came across the stories of Thomas Edison and Michael Jordan. Thomas Edison was the one who invented a light bulb, and let me remind you that this was after he failed 1,000 times. His story was a turning point in my life, and that's how the theory of repetition came about. I asked myself, why would anyone continue to do something after so many countless attempts? Then it came to pass in my head that the more you do something, the better you become. One of Thomas Edison's quotes goes and say that, and I quote, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." The theory of repetition revolves around overcoming failure. When you do something 1,000,000 times, you start being immune to failure, and that's when you become successful. The most difficult part about failure is the emotional part. Your state of mind at that particular moment is looking for an easy way out, and that's when you give up. 9,000 shots missed, 300 games lost, 26 times trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. You can guess who I am talking about, and that is Michael Jordan. A question arises, is Michael Jordan talented, or did he become successful in basketball by using the rule of repetition? Because from what we can observe, there is a significant pattern that we cannot ignore, and that is doing something over and over again regardless of failures that you picked up along the way. In order for us to reach greatness, we need to master whatever we are doing. In order for us to master this, we need to practice. And how do we practice? We do the same thing over and over again until we become perfect. As I conclude, we often try something once or twice, not reaching the end. Exponential growth can be achieved when you are obsessed with just trying one more time. Most successful individuals can tell you that becoming successful is not easy, but it is attainable when you don't quit.